Hey, how's it going? It's your buddy Mike Squires in the Couches Podcast, episode number 231. 231. And my guest, Martin Rebelski, the odd keyboardist. I don't have a ton of keyboardists on the podcast, although I guess Chris Ballou is technically a keyboardist. So I back-to-back keyboardists. I worked that out in the moment just now. Thanks for staying with me. Martin is a fantastic keyboardist. I had a chance to tour with him this summer. He is keyboardist with English bands Doves, also Peter Hook and the Light, which is where I met him, and Echo and the Bunnymen. He toured with Echo and the Bunnymen, and we had a chance to see Echo and the Bunnymen together on our tour. And that was fun to see and observe with him. He also pretty much knew what the set was going to be. And I'll just leave it there. It was super fun to host Martin. Different people I know different ways on the podcast. Some people I don't know at all. Martin and I toured together for 5 weeks and had a number of conversations. Some of the stuff we talk about here we covered before, and so I was familiar with his backstory. But as you're getting to know someone on tour, it's not like getting to know them at work or getting to know them any other way, because you're really with them all the time. So it was really nice. It's been, I don't know, a few weeks since that tour ended. So it was nice to catch up and see his face after, being with each other and then a dead stop. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. It was very, very fun for me. Go check out Martin's solo music also at rebelski.bandcamp, or just search Rebelski on Bandcamp. Follow him on Twitter, Rebelski Sounds, and over there at Instagram. And you won't regret it, I hope. Don't let me down, Martin. Don't let me down. Thank you for listening, watching, however it is that you take this podcast in. Thank you so much to my Patreon support. You guys, incredible. Thank you so much. That is what makes this happen. I finished another performance video just this morning, or I delivered the final music performance this morning. So I'll be working on editing another video. There are 3 that are just this close to being done. So there are more videos coming. There are podcasts every single week. Thank you for supporting on Patreon. Patreon.com/couchriffs. Please, if you got $5 to toss at the podcast every month, 20 people times $5 is $100. That pays for my web hosting and for the Riverside platform. There you go. So thank you so much. Also, thank you super duper duper so much to my sponsor, Variety Coffee Roasters. I drink it every single day. That's science fact. I make it in a Chemex. It's an awesome part of my daily ritual. I recommend it. I recommend Variety. They're awesome. Everything about it is awesome. The packaging is killer. Their coffee comes in packaging that looks like a old carton of cigarettes. It's fucking hot, man. Please go check out varietycoffeeroasters.com, at Variety Coffee on Instagram and all the other jazz. And buy yourself some coffee. I'm a coffee professional and I drink Variety. So if my professional opinion means anything to you, take my word for it. Thank you for sticking in here. We're going to get into the episode. Don't forget the golden rule, okay? Treat people the way you want to be treated, and don't be a dick. Sort of start as, this is it, we're going. What do you think about that?
Yeah, fun. Shoot, go for it.
So thanks for making time for me, first of all. It's nice to see your face again.
Hey, you're welcome.
Just spent 6 weeks intimately close to you, and then, like any tour, I'm here. I am back at home for the last 2 weeks, whatever it's been, 3 weeks, and it already seems like another life away.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Isn't it interesting how, I don't know about you, but I think, well, I can only speak for myself, but when you're about to embark on a tour, just the preceding days and weeks, you think, oh my God, wow, I've got to go on this 6-week tour with loads of people, working hand in pocket with each other for 24/7. And you can get a bit of anxiety about it. And then
Sure.
about a week in, you sort of forget all that anxiety. You're having such a good time.
Right.
And when you get back home, it seems really alien to be back home.
Yeah,
and
you betcha.
it's
And you guys
like,
are already
wow,
back
okay,
to number
I'm
5, right?
Well, yeah, this is it. We are.
You guys are back to number
5.
5.
Were you number 7? Yeah, we're back to 5. We did 6 and 5.
Yeah.
That's the number of the bass players we've had. By the way, yeah, bonkers.
Anyway, I had a great time touring with you guys. It was hard to get the rhythm of how things work, but once it sunk in, it was time to go home. I was like, oh, I just got comfortable with the way these guys travel. It's crazy.
Yeah, it can be quite brutal, can't it? Because we're not on a tour bus in America. We're
Right.
Generally hotels every night and flying. So a lot of flights. So it's a lot of sort of red-eye flights, early mornings, late nights. You got to look after yourself, haven't you? Which you do, anyway.
Stay hydrated. That's what I say.
Stay hydrated. But it was interesting for you, because you jumped in at the deep end completely. You didn't have much time to prep. You had like 40 songs to learn. And just...
I mean, 43, but who's counting?
Touche. Yeah, well, I mean, it was a lot. Anyway, it was a lot that we threw on you in such a short space of time.
I was just happy to be there, right?
You never told us that. You never mentioned that. It's funny.
I never mentioned it?
No, you didn't.
Man,
you
that's
never
one of my
we
life's
never got
regrets.
That from you. Yeah, if only you'd have said it.
God, next time.
Because that was one of those in-house joke things as well. Because that's your mantra, isn't it? You're a real positive thinker, and before we go on stage every day, like literally the second before you know, that's your thing, isn't it? You like to go and say and be positive and go, like, I'm really happy to be here. And us being Brits, we're like, oh yeah, whatever, because we're so used to being around each other as well.
The first night it happened, you guys all looked at me like I was crazy, and I think Cookie said, "Fuck off." I was like, right.
Well, that was the real baptism of fire. Night. That was the baptism of fire as well. Of just being, an American with a bunch of Brits, because our humour and everything like that.
Yeah.
We're really sarcastic all the time, and we know each other so well for years that it's just, and we're so used to doing so many gigs all the time that we'll just be chatting about the weather or just something really daft before we go on stage. Whereas you're like really in the moment and really like, oh, focus. Wow, okay, I'm really happy to be here. And we're just like, hey, oh yeah, we're doing a gig. Okay, yeah, as we're walking on stage. And it took a while for us to acclimatise to you, and vice versa, didn't it? And then as soon as we did, then it was great. It was,
yeah, of course.
But that's part of the process, which is great as well about being on tour. Meet new people, different.
There's an element of that with being introduced to any group of people that you're touring with, and it seems like you've traveled with a number of groups, so it's not an art which you are foreign to, the art of like being new.
No. I mean, it's a new challenge and a new experience, isn't it? And it's daunting before you embark on it. Like I was saying previously, it is daunting because you're only human and you're meeting a group of 10 people or more that you're going to be pretty much living with, working 20-hour days for weeks on end.
Right.
You want to get on with them. if at all possible,
or avoid them,
or avoid them. Yeah, which didn't see much of you on this tour. Well, your own space is a valuable commodity, isn't it, in life in general? But on tour, it's just you don't get it really.
I get it during my walks. That's how I get my space.
But when were you doing when were you finding the time for that?
At the airport.
Okay.
Don't you remember?
It's not. I thought you were on about hiking, like in the hills or something. It's
no. I would walk like 3 miles in the airport at least.
True.
It was great.
Yeah, you would.
It was great.
Listening to sort of self-help meditation was you.
I was listening to some of that stuff, podcasts and whatever. Also listening to material that I needed to be familiar with for the tour. Just like I didn't get that part. How does it go? And I would just put a song on repeat and listen to it over and over and over again.
Well, as you know, that's the best way of learning something as well, isn't it? It's not, probably a bit of a fallacy that the best way of learning something is sitting down at your instrument. Try, if you just listen to something over and over, by the time you sat next to your instrument, you've half the battle's already won, isn't it?
You know it, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's when we drop stuff on you. Not me. I would put my hand up to say, not really me. But other people might get a bit bored and go of the set and go, okay, how about sticking Perfect Kissing or something like that?
Yeah, hey, let's add a 9-minute song with the most parts of any of the songs in it.
Yeah, without doing a sound check, and we'll do it tonight, by the way, as well.
Yeah. I only had to do it twice, and a dude from L1011 did it one night as well. I think on the whole tour, that song only happened 3 times.
Yeah, or Jack did it, didn't he? As well? Jack did it. Potsy did it.
Oh yeah.
Everybody had a go at it, didn't they? I don't know why.
Oh, he only played the beginning, the slappy part.
Potsy, yeah.
Yeah. Let's focus on you.
Okay.
People have to hear me. People have to hear me talk about me other places. We had a nice lunch one day and we went over a lot of this stuff, but I want to talk about a lot of it again and maybe ask you more, be more invasive into your private thoughts. Where are you from is where I always start.
How dare you?
I know.
Well, I'm from...
Sorry.
Do you mean my ancestry, or where was I born? Where did I grow up?
No, where geographically, where are you from?
Well, I'm from middle of England, Warwickshire, it's called. Mm-hmm. It's sort of equidistant between Manchester and London.
Okay.
Slap bang in the middle of England. So, yeah, it's just sort of the farthest point from anywhere cultural or interesting, really. A pleasant little town.
How big of a town is it?
Small. Yeah, not a city, a town.
Got it. How did you become interested in playing music in a town like this?
Well, just probably out of boredom, really. When I was, like most kids, you get forced to do music at school when you're 7 or 8 or something like that, and play the recorder. I think I did pick the violin up at one point, and
right,
was never really sort of into it, and because music teachers were too harsh, and that's never a good way to learn, is it?
Can you imagine being in charge of a bunch of kids anyway? It'd be really difficult.
Yeah. Oh God, it's not for me. That's why I don't teach. But well, my grandfather. To give you a bit of a backstory, my grandfather was a piano player, so I had that musical. He's the only person in my family who's musical, and he used to be in sort of big band and things like that. And that's before I was born. And when I was a kid, he had an organ and he used to play that all the time, and it was in his front room, and we used to go around and listening to him play on that. So I had that sort of heritage behind me. And one year, I think I was about 9 or 10, I just said to him, "Oh, I'm interested to play." And he was super keen to teach me, and he bought me this tiny little synth, this Yamaha mini keyed thing. It's like 2 octaves.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught me for a few months, and he, rightly so, he taught me the correct way to play, all the scales and how to read music and everything like that. But I was so bored of it. I wanted to learn what was on the radio, and he was like, "No, you need to learn, like, this is the way to do it. This is the right way to do it." And he was right, of course, but when you don't really want to hear it as a kid.
Right.
I just wanted to go skateboarding and play what was on the radio. So he was just like, "Look, this is the way it's going to be." And I fell out of it and didn't really bother with it again for a few years. And then when I was about 13, 14, my close friend Mark, who was still a really good friend with me to this day, we were just out skateboarding around our road. He lived in a few streets away, and we were just out chewing the fat and just sort of, can't remember if we were riding on our bikes or skateboarding or whatever, but we just heard out of nowhere somebody playing the drums, and with the sort of a buoyant, youthful approach, we just thought, all right, we'll just knock on that person's door and just go, "Hey, we like your drumming, wow." And so we did. I mean, you'd never do that as an adult, would you? But as a kid, you're just like, you've got bravado, and you're just
Right.
like, okay, well, that sounds amazing. And so we just knocked on the door, and we sort of vaguely knew who that person was anyway. And his mum answered the door and went, "Oh yeah, just go on up and go and have a listen." And he was playing Beatles, and I think he was playing a classic James Brown funky beat, like funky drummer thing, which we were just like, we'd never heard anybody do that. We'd only ever heard people playing Kumbaya and things like that.
Sure.
On the recorder. So it was just like, oh wow, this guy can drum. He's amazing, and he's our age, and he's at our school. And my friend looked at me and he went, "Oh, you learned a bit of keyboards, didn't you?" He was like, "I could play guitar. Let's start a band." And so we were like, "Oh, great!" That? Just like that, let's start a band. So we had a band there, and then when we left his house,
did you guys have a name?
Oh God, I can't recall that. We must have. Oh, I think it was the name of our class, like 4RS or something like that.
Right. That's very punk of you.
Yeah. Very. Yeah, so we're in a band now. Better learn how to play an instrument. So then I blew off this dusty old keyboard, thinking, well, okay, can I remember how to play it? And I'd forgotten really everything my grandfather had taught me. And I just turned the radio on. I just thought, okay, well, let's see if I can just play along to something on the radio. And for some reason, I could. What notes I heard, I was picking up by ear. It was only something really simple, but I thought, oh my God, wow, okay. I did remember something. And subconsciously, what I'd learned from my grandfather had gone in somewhere, but I was just managing to pick it up. And then my friend did the same, and we just sort of stumbled through for years playing like that, really. Just self-taught.
Were you playing songs from the radio, or were you guys writing songs?
Mainly from the radio.
Yeah. Do you remember what some of the earliest songs you were doing were?
When we were 14? Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I mean, it's a bit later on, but we're doing the Doors then, because that's what I was really into. U2, who did all their early stuff.
Some of that is like, it's not super simple. It's not like it's not like playing an Adele song where you're like, okay, that's this, that's clearly this chord or whatever.
Sure.
Were they rudimentary versions?
No. I mean, it was.
You picked it up pretty quick.
Yeah, picked it up pretty quick, and I mean, that drummer, he already had a technique. He was already rocking. You know, he was way above his years in level of aptitude, ability, technique, and everything. So we had to really step our game up to be to his level, which was great because I mean, and then we quickly found then that we gravitated towards older kids who were into music, and so that's probably when we got into the Doors. Really, we had friends
Right.
that were sort of more like 17, 18 that got us into Led Zeppelin, the Doors, and things like that. And so we were like, oh, okay, we need to check this out. And yeah, so then we got learning those type of tracks really.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because of the time in your schooling when you decided like, oh, this is what I do, and you were focused on getting good at it, how were your school studies affected? And
I'm laughing because
and
that's
what was that like at home?
That's a very apt question. That well, yeah, it's interesting. Nobody's ever asked me that question before, and it's really apt. That it's.
I mean, you could see a definite line in my grades, boom, drop when I started playing guitar. It just was, went from almost straight A's to barely graduating high school.
Well, yeah, I mean, ditto. Apart from I wasn't going from straight A's, I was just going from nowhere. There was just nothing. I was just sort of. My school reports were just like, oh, he's disinterested and he's going to fail everything, and pretty much that's what I did.
Right.
And I mean, the thing is, it was from a nice area, but our school was a bad school, not in the sense of like certain places in America, but or in even any cities in England, but it was
There
from
were
that
metal
area.
detectors.
Yeah,
Right.
it wasn't anything like that, of course, obviously, and it's quite affluent area where I grew up, but I was just in a working class estate, and the school was wasn't the greatest of schools, but because me and my close friend Mark, we were good kids, and we kind of generally got on with everybody, and so the teachers gave us a bit of a free pass because of that, and because we're into music as well. That if we were in maths and it was really boring, we'd just go, oh, can we be excused? We've got like orchestra or band practice or something, and they would just take us on face value and go, yeah, of course, and just let us go off. And so, very trustingly,
right.
And our music teacher, he was great. He was a really cool guy, and he had the same problem. When we started this conversation, we were saying, how difficult it is to teach and teach kids. He had a really difficult time, and because nobody listened to him, and he's pulling his hair out. But we were the ones that really wanted to be there. So after school, they'd have synths there, like a D5, Roland, they'd have guitars and drum kits. So we'd want to be there. We'd be really keen to be in music. So he gravitated towards us and give us a bit of a free pass because we were really interested. But because of that, if we wanted to get out another lesson, we'd go into music, and he'd be like, "Yeah, just come in, whatever, do we like?" So that means we kind of failed everything else. But I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it.
Well, if you changed it, your whole life could potentially be different at this point.
Yeah. This is it, isn't it?
Did you, at that time through high school, did you look to the future as absolutely being musical for you?
Yeah, 100%. As soon as I had that, as soon as I was in that band, then from 14, I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. From 14, like there's no ifs or buts or maybes. This is what I'm doing as a career. I found my thing. And I remember when it got to the point where it's kind of, you're doing your exams at 16, 17. I know, I did really bad at them, but it's at that point when you see your careers advisor, And this was brilliant. He said to me, we sat down, and he was just like really interested in what I had to say. He was like, well, tell me about what do you want to do? What do you want to be as a career? Tell me about all your desires and dreams and everything. And I just said, look, I'm going to be a musician. I'm going to be a professional musician. That's my path. I'm in a band. I did this, and I just went through what I was doing. And he went, great. And he listened to me and he went, brilliant. Yeah, I've got this great opportunity for you. I was like, oh, okay, wow. What's this? And they just pushed this sheet of paper in front of me. And I turned it over, and it was like to be a trainee at the local factory.
Right.
And I was like, you just didn't listen to a word I said, did you? And that's what you get as a musician in life, really. It's kind of, yeah. Well, I think you get treated two ways. Especially being a professional musician. When you say that to somebody, I mean, you don't say professional musician, but it's just when people say to you, "What do you do? What do you do for a living?" And you say, "I'm a musician."
Right.
You get two responses. I think it really polarizes. They either look at you and go, "He's obviously a bum," or they go, "Oh my God, he's a multi-millionaire."
Right.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating the way people sort of react to you.
Well, it kind of feels like that sometimes. It's a feast or famine profession.
Yeah,
often.
Well, true.
Unless
true.
you have a gig, that you are either constantly working or you have some sort of a retainer.
Yeah, I guess the truth is it's somewhere in between, isn't it? A bum and a millionaire.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a roller coaster.
A bum with a pocket full of cash. T-shirt money.
Yeah.
But you went to music. You ended up going to music school, right?
Yeah,
I did. That sounds terrible.
Well, I mean, the thing is, once again, I think my enthusiasm got me through, really, rather than the grades, because I failed all my grades in school. Music was the only one that I managed to pass. And so I went to college. I went to media studies after school. And that was, I didn't have the grades to get in at all. But because I had an enthusiasm to get on the course, because it was like people were filmmaking on there and they were making documentaries and doing art, but I was interested in recording sound and scoring films. And so in the summer before everybody enrolled, I went along to the college and just introduced myself to the sort of main lecturer there, and just sort of sounded him out about it and just, oh, what's the course entail? I'm interested in sound design and film scoring and things like that. And when I came to sort of apply, I didn't have the qualifications to get on the course, but he still let me on. And he told me that the first day that we enrolled, he said, the reason you got on this course is because you had sort of the determination to come and see me. That's what got you on, and I remembered you. And he said nobody else, not one other student, did that. So I was like, wow, okay, that's lucky. He made me. He was like, he did make me.
That's a powerful lesson to learn in life.
Yeah, just a bit of drive and enthusiasm. It gets you a long way, doesn't it? Because nobody else bothered. Everybody else was just a form that they'd sent off. I was the only sort of person they'd met or even spoken to. So I was one of the first names they'd put on the course. But he just said to me, look, you shouldn't really be here, so you're going to have to do a night
Get
course.
Your shit together.
And I was like, oh, God. So that was painful. But yeah, it was a life lesson. And I'd have gone from being with a bunch of 16-year-olds at school to a media course where there was, the average age was sort of in their 30s. So that was, and where everybody got their shit together. And I'd gone from a school where everybody's sort of just mucking around, really, and it wasn't. If you were working hard and getting good grades, people are probably going to bully you and mock you really for it.
Right.
It was that kind of environment. But whereas in college, it was the complete opposite of that. It was if you're working hard, everybody looked up to you and was like, "Wow, okay, they're the people that are doing the work and the graft here."
Was that a relief to have that shift in environment?
Yeah, it was a shock. And it's like, okay, well, I need to actually work here and do coursework and just study and do research. And I mean, that put me in a good stead from life, really, because I like to be prepared for things, pretty organized person.
Sure.
So that really set me up for things like that. And then once again, when I got but that, I remembered that it stuck in my head about getting into media college, because I knew ultimately I wanted to study music, and move out of the small town that I was in and move to a big city, London or Manchester, and be with like-minded souls and be in a band and, play. So that was my ultimate ambition. And
so how long before that happened? Because it did happen, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I didn't have the qualifications again to get into music, to study music at university, because I was studying media. So I was in that same situation again where, I didn't have the qualifications. So right. I had to just go up, really. And I mean, I got an audition. It was really sought after music college, and luckily I got an audition. But I really put my time and energy into doing it, and I went sort of above and beyond, really. And at the time, I was working at a theatre as a sound engineer. So I was only 17, and when I was on the media course, they'd put a call out. This local, local? It was the Royal Shakespeare Company. So it was a world-renowned theatre. And they said, "Yeah, hello, sweetie, tread in the boards." But most people there, they're like, "Oh yeah, working in a theatre, whatever, I can't bother." But I just thought, well, it's going to be valuable for me. This, I'm interested. And I knew somebody else that worked there actually as a lighting engineer. And it was just as a bit of work experience for 2 weeks. And but I just thought, I'll do it. It's a good thing to put on your CV. And it's funny because I just thought to myself, oh, what I'll do is I'll do the 2 weeks work experience, and then on the last day I'll say, hey, I've enjoyed myself. Oh, if you need anybody to work here, make coffee and tea and everything like that, mop the floors, or I'm your man. And I said that to my friend who worked there, who was a lighting engineer, and he was like, you've got that all wrong. He's like, what you want to do is you want to go in with bravado on the first morning, and you want to go up to the main guy, and you want to go, I want to work here, give me a job. And so that's what I did.
It's like the first day of prison thing. I thought you were going to say, my friend that was a lighting guy told me go in there and kick the ass of the biggest guy there.
Lift him
I
up
work here now.
In a Darth Vader grip, and you're my wife now. Sort of. Yeah, so I mean that's what I did, and against my judgment, really, because I was like, "Ooh," and he just turned around and went, "Oh, I like the cut of your jib. You're hired." Oh, okay, and I was like, "Look, I'll make the tea or whatever," and he's like, "No, you can be our sound engineer, and we'll train you up for the next 2 weeks on the show, and then we'll put you on a wage straight away." So, yeah, that's just that bit of bravado. And it was funny because, I said it was a bit embarrassing actually, looking back, because I was. Do you know American Beauty, the film American Beauty?
Yeah, of course.
Well, the director Sam Mendes was directing the play at the time,
Okay.
so it
Yeah.
was in pre-production. All the actors were there. He was there, and he was in front of me, and he overheard me saying all this, and everybody sort of just looked at me. Who's this kid, saying, "Hey, I'm going to work here." But yeah, it was just that bit of bravado that I'd probably never do now, really. But I worked there for a
I
year.
probably would, but I'm kind of a ding dong. So
Well, if you
this
don't
was
ask, you don't
great
get, do
luck
you?
for you to get a gig working with audio, but ultimately it wasn't what you wanted to be doing.
No,
How
it
did
wasn't.
you
It wasn't.
balance that?
Well, I had a real interest in it, and it was a sort of a plan B. That I was just being a bit of a realist, and I was thinking, well, I know how hard it is to be a musician and earn a pound out of playing any music at
Sure.
all. And but look at me, I'm 17 and I'm getting paid to be a sound engineer already, and it's sort of fallen on my lap really, and it's working in music, and I was micing up string quartets and doing sound design and triggering samples off tape loops and things like that. So it was really creative and interesting. So it was. I found it fascinating, and but it's interesting because when I had the audition for the music university, that's the thing they picked up on, because I was working at the theatre at the time as a sound engineer, and so I did this audition. I was really buzzing off it. I was like, I was pleased with my performance, and everything like that. And he just looked at me and he just said to me, "That's great, but why the hell do you want to spend the next 3 years of your life studying music when you've already got a job in a creative field?"
What a discouraging environment it sounds like everywhere. I've
Yeah,
always thought like,
yeah,
man, in parts of Europe and England, everything, it's people are so much more encouraging of the arts, but it doesn't really sound like it.
yeah. Well, this is it. I mean, as you know, every sort of hurdle to be a musician, and it's there's barriers, isn't there, that people, because bearing in mind at that point I'd not earned a penny out of playing music. I'd done like pub gigs and
Right.
club gigs, and you're always out of pocket. And so he sort of had a point, really. It's like, well, you're already earning money in a creative field. Why do you want to give that up to do this? And I was honest. I was like, well, this is my passion, and I want to follow my dream. And yeah, that was a real sliding doors moment for me, because I had a potentially full time career that could have travelled, working as a sound engineer. And it was already set up there, that role for me. But I just was like, it's not scratching my. I want to be a musician. That's what I've got in me.
How
And
often
yeah,
do you
so that was it.
wonder
So
to yourself what your life would look like if you would have stayed there and not pursued music?
yeah, well, I've not looked at it too often, but I have thought about it, of course. And when I've been back in that area, I don't go back to that area very often, but when I do, it's a really pleasant area, and it's that whole environment was great. And if I walk past that building, I think, oh god, that could be me, could working there now. And yeah, I mean, it's you only really have those times of reflection when you haven't got any work on, and you think, oh god, I could have been doing that now. But they're only fleeting. They're only fleeting. I would have definitely regretted it.
Yeah, of course.
I made the 100% the right decision.
So I'm assuming that the audition went well, and your response to the question, "Why do you want to do this?" landed well with the screeners there, and because you
Yeah,
ended up in music school.
yeah. Which was a double-edged sword as
So
well.
that
I
was
mean, did you
like
study
that was
music?
like no, like individually, not in institutionally. So how different was that? Because you had some music lessons, yeah, but now
No,
you're
well,
probably
yeah.
you're stepping into it in a different way and in the environment of, many other music students and people of different levels of ability.
Well, that was the big thing, you see, because I was from a small town, and it's big fish in a small pond, and also a keyboard player. So everybody wants to be a guitarist or a drummer. Oh, hello, doggy.
That was my little dog, yeah. I think my wife just got home.
Ah.
She'll come in through the other door.
Yeah, so it was big fish in a small pond, and I was sort of in most, or if I wasn't in them, I was asked to be in most of the bands in my town, and had a bit of a reputation. He's the keyboard player, he's the go-to guy. And with that, especially when you're 16, 17, your ego's just through the roof, isn't it? Like, I'm the absolute business. And
Sure.
you go through that phase as a teenager as well, of trying to be as most technical player as you can. And then, I mean, I was just spending all my waking hours practicing and learning all these scales and modes, and I didn't know what I was doing. But I was just trying to be like the most technical player I could be, really. And you say you're just full of this bravado. And then when I went to the city that first day, you're sitting there, pretty cocky, really. And then they'll put you in a group, and it's like, right, okay. I remember it was like a jam, and everybody just went around, and there was a few keyboard players. There was like 3 keyboard players. There's like drummers, guitarists, all sorts of people, and everybody's just going around and just playing all their chops. And just I'd never really heard people of that ability to play. And I was like, oh, okay, wow. Is everybody, I thought I was the only one that could play like this. Everybody could play like this and better. So that
Right.
was a really grounding experience. It was great for that.
Did it have any other side effects beside being grounded and like pulling you back to earth? Like, okay, it's time to get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know
Tell
about
me, like,
like Charlie
go
Parker.
ahead.
Apparently,
Sure.
Charlie Parker, he what was the story? That he was playing something in a key, and then somebody said to him, "Oh, you could play it in B instead," and he was just like, "What? I only know it in D." And I think the drummer threw a cymbal at him or something, as the story goes, and he was so embarrassed that he went off, locked himself in a shed for sort of 6 months, and learnt like every song, every key, woodshedding.
Right.
Have you heard that terminology before?
Because he couldn't transpose the
Yeah,
song
because he couldn't transpose, and he was
into
embarrassed, and
another
he just
key.
thought, I need to. I'm not good enough. I need to raise my musicianship. I don't need to just learn this song and this song and this song. I need to learn them all, and in every key as well, and be able to
Music.
transpose them, and just improvise in every key and
Learn music,
learn music. And so
which is what your grandfather was doing in the beginning, right? I mean,
yeah,
teaching the fundamentals of, all right, this is how this is the major scale. Like learning the what the space in between song or notes sounds like, oh, from here, this increment, like this interval sounds like this. It's like recognizing a color or something. Like when you hear it, you just know it.
yeah,
But if you don't
absolutely.
know how a major scale is, forget it.
Yeah, and they're the rudiments of music, and when you come back when you're older, you do appreciate those lessons from my grandfather when I was 10. It's like, okay, I get it now.
Right.
And but then also it's learning how to. I mean, you said it there, listen, and not just. I mean, up to that point, I think really you're so egotistical all you really listen to is yourself. But when you're put in an environment with loads of other musicians that have a certain aptitude, what you just said there is learning the space between the notes and when not to play and listening to other people. That's vitally important to be in a band. And up to that point, when you're in your room and you're 17, you're just listening to yourself and not thinking about the push and pull of other musicians.
Well, when you're in your bedroom by yourself, you're by yourself. That's all you're listening to. You're not really interacting with a song, right? You're not like, if you're just reproducing another song, you're like, okay, this is my part. So when you get into a room and play with other people with regularity, it's really quite different.
Yeah, well,
So when
absolutely.
you were at school, that was you were thrown like probably way far into the deep end. You guys were playing. You had ensemble weekly, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, what back in school or university?
University.
Yeah, oh yeah, we were. I mean, well, daily. All sorts. I mean, it was mainly jazz, really. It wasn't classical.
Right.
And I think as a piano player, keyboard player, that's where, well, I certainly gravitated towards that style of playing because it was technical and it was something to get my teeth into, and you learn all the modes, and it's interesting. It was interesting to me anyway, and because if you're a guitarist, you've got a multitude of players and styles to go and pick up influences from. Jimi Hendrix or Eddie Van Halen, or the list is endless, isn't it? But as keyboard players, you can't really think of any. Rick
Well,
Wakeman
there
or
are
something. They're like all these
right. There are
prog
10
'70s
very
people.
famous one.
Yeah, there's not,
Probably.
and they certainly didn't rock my world, any of them. So it was until I heard Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, and I was like, okay, right, that's what I want to play like. I want to play like Herbie Hancock.
Right.
But also I loved Kraftwerk and just electronic music in general, and anything sort of synth based.
Right.
And that's not technically played, but it's just great music. And so I was drawn towards synthesized and piano, keyboard based music. But then once you reach a certain level, you want to sort of not show off, but you just want to get to the best of your ability, and that was listening to Herbie Hancock for me.
What's your favorite
When I
era?
heard, well, Headhunters.
Oh yeah. Same.
Yeah.
What a record.
So yeah, I mean, it blew my mind when I heard that record. It's funny because a friend of mine, he brought it round on vinyl, and he was listening to it at the wrong speed, and he thought that's what it was.
Right.
And so
was he listening to it fast?
Yeah, and it was just like because
Wow.
because at the time it was like Italian house and dance music, and I was really into that as well. And so he's playing it like that, as if you'd play it in a club, and I was like, hold on, you're playing this at the wrong speed, and I played it. I was like, oh wow, okay. And he was like, well, this doesn't sound right. I was like, well, it is right.
So groovy.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. I mean, what musicianship is really tasteful. It just holds up. It's timeless music.
I'd say. So the music that I know you to have built your career on is far from that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Was there a time when that's what you were sort of pursuing, like playing, more experimental jazz or jazz fusion?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all through that period, I was in bands. Yeah. I
I'm
can hear.
marking the clips here, and I can just mute my mic in the appropriate places.
Okay, fair enough. I was going to say I wanted to see your dog, but
oh well, here, come here. This is Mr. Big.
hey,
Yeah.
hello, fella.
He's the biggest dog. Huh, Biggie?
What a cutie.
Biggie, you stop it. You stop it. So you were pursuing, like, that's when you were in school, and as you came out of university, you thought,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the next Herbie Hancock?
Well, I don't. I wasn't that self-inflated by that point because I'd had experience of playing with other really incredible musicians. So, but I still really enjoyed playing that music, and I wanted to become the best version of me as a piano player I could, technically. And so yeah, that's how I first started earning money out of music. That I was playing at jazz clubs, 3 times a week with trios, quartets, just with a fake book, playing all the standards.
Right.
And yeah, it's hard. It's a tough gig. You're getting paid peanuts, or you might just be getting a meal. That's
Right.
sort of it, really. And but when you're at university, it's you take anything. So I was in quite a few bands at the time. I was in. I mean, it's funny because that's sort of lasted to this day. But I think the first week I was at university, I started a band. Just because because that's all I knew, right? Because when I was 14,
well, that's what you do when you're in your 20s, also.
Yeah, and my first exposure to music was hearing that drummer, and my first reaction was, right, let's start a band. So the first week in university, when I was getting to know people, I was like, well, let's get to know each other by starting a band.
Right.
And we did, and we all through university was in a few bands, and we gigged all over the Northwest, mainly playing kind of funk, really. And there was quite a few of us. There's about 7 of us. So I don't know how we earned any money, but we earned a little bit of money, just sort of beer money, really.
Fun.
And yeah, it was fun. It was just you cut your teeth doing that sort of thing, loading your own gear in and driving, hiring cars and driving all over. But then I was, yeah. So also then I was doing jazz things, and I was just anything for money. And so when I left uni, I was just scraping a living, barely scraping a living, really, just doing that.
Still, you're like, all right, I'm pursuing jazz. I'm a jazz pianist.
Well, yeah, and I had another sliding doors moment. I've had a few in my life, and this was another one where it was, okay, how can I actually make this work as a career? Because it's, I'm only getting bits and bobs of work here, and I'd rather be doing something that I can get my teeth into, but is realistically what can I get? And it was, I got offered a gig playing piano in a jazz trio or quartet. I can't recall which, but it was in the Middle East. And so this was straight out of uni. This was sort of 2022, I think. I don't know, 21, 22. And so it was playing.
You took it.
Wow. So I went for the audition, and it was with a drummer and a bass player and a I can't remember, maybe a sax player. They'd already got the gig, you see, and they were looking for a pianist. And it was a 6-month residency in the Middle East, and you're playing long sets. It was really well paid. And I got the gig, so I got past the audition, got the gig, and they offered it me. And I just sat there and I just thought to myself, you know what? It's not for me, this. If I do that, if I play sort of 6-7 hours a day, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to be so sick of music after 6 months, I'll probably just quit music. And I've still got the passion to be a musician, and that's going to kill it for me. And I'd known somebody actually at the time that had happened to, so that's why it's probably in the forefront of my mind. And even though I didn't have any money at all, I turned it down because it was another one of those things where I've got to follow my passion, and at that point I got really disenchanted with playing jazz and playing these jazz clubs to 30 people while they're eating the dinner and not paying attention, and then I'd look across, and the guitarist would be just sort of really just musically masturbating on stage. And
some things never change.
Yeah, well, yeah. Bloody guitarist. But yeah, he was playing with his teeth and he was really going hell for leather. And I was just I was embarrassed to be up there. I just thought, what am I doing here? I mean, there's nothing wrong with a bit of self-indulgent playing, you know.
Sure.
But I think there's a time and a place for it, and just in front of 20 people where nobody's interested. I just thought, I've had enough of this. And just when I had that sort of moment of clarity, within a matter of weeks, I got a call to go in the studio with Doves.
It was just like that.
Yeah. Just a bit of serendipity.
Do you know how you became? How did you come on their radar?
Well, it was one of my housemates at the time. I was in a shared house. There's sort of 5-6 of us in this house, and one of the guys worked at the Hacienda. Yeah, the ubiquitous nightclub in Manchester. And so he worked behind the bar there, but also in the daytime, he worked at Rob's Records as sort of a guy around the office, and that's who Doves were signed to. And so I'd been talking to him about all these sort of things, you know, and he knew what I was up to, and he knew where my sort of mentality was, and then they were in the
and he knew you were good.
Yeah, he's a good friend.
He knew you were capable.
Yeah, which was nice of him to think that way about me. And they were in the middle of their album, and I mean, I had no idea about this at all, but he was in the office when their manager Dave just happened to be in the office and just said, "Oh, you know, we're in the middle of recording the album, but we need a piano player to play on one of the tracks. Here It Comes." And so my friend Simon went, "Oh, I know somebody I can recommend," and that was it. I got the call, and it came at just at the right time, because I was looking to get to play more rock, and yeah, and so they called me up. I think Jimmy called me up and said, "Hey, you know, we're in Wales recording. Do you fancy coming down midweek, putting the piano part down?" I was like, "Yeah, great."
How nervous, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being super nervous and 1 being completely at home? How were you feeling in leading up to going to the studio? So far, you haven't mentioned making any recordings, so I imagine you're still pretty green. You're in your 20s, and
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was early 20s. I was like 21, 22. Right. But I'd been in studios. I mean, I'd had a job as a tape op when I was still at school, sort of 16. So I'd been in studios and I'd been around that environment. And, you know, like I worked in theatre as a sound engineer. So, I mean, that's different. But when I was a tape op in the studio, yeah, I was certainly around people that had record deals and things like that. I mean, it used to frustrate me a bit because I was be thinking, oh, I'm just working the tape machine here, but I'd rather be actually laying down the tracks for sure. So that's why I knew I didn't want to be a recording engineer at the time. So I'd had that experience being in studios, and I knew the process. You know, I'd seen people do multiple takes and everything like that, and so it wasn't like my first time ever in a recording studio. And also at university, they've got professional recording studios in there where we'd jam and we'd record ourselves. And
but certainly you felt a little bit of heat, like this is an opportunity. I want to come with my best.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course I did. And, you know, they had a bit of a clout and a bit of history as well. I mean, they hadn't released anything under the Doves name at that point, but they had a sub previously who I was certainly aware of, because the track Ain't No Love, it was a big hit in the UK, and that was sort of 7 years prior to that. But I knew it was those guys, and I loved that track, and I really respected it, and it was... Yeah, and I hadn't really dealt myself with record labels or people on that level. So, of course, yeah, it was... I mean, nervous. It's funny because I don't really get too nervous. I'm more excited. Like, so it's more of an excitement. Like, wow, this is a great opportunity, and I want to take it here, and I'm looking forward to it. And a bit of nerves is good, but I wasn't quivering in my boots or anything. I was just like, wow, I'm just excited.
Yeah. Were you able to get a copy of the track before you showed up to the studio, or were you recording to it without hearing it previously?
Yeah, no, I've not heard it. It was... yeah, I remember I didn't have a car at the time, so Dave Rofe, the manager, Dove's manager, who's still Dove's manager, he came and picked me up from my house, and I mean, it's funny. I remember them saying, they said to me, "Oh, what? You know, do you want to request a piano to play on in the studio?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want a Steinway Model D, please."
Yeah.
Because I just thought, well, yeah, I'll just get sort of
the best
thing, yeah. And they went, "Oh, okay, oh, great." And I got there, and they'd sort of borrowed the sound engineer's granny's piano and got it sort of craned in this sort of
tuned up,
out of tune, really old sort of. So that was quite funny. So it was a bit about, it was like me just asking for the best piano there is on the market, and them just going, "Oh yeah, whatever, here you go."
That's kind of like every technical writer since, before and since.
Pretty much. pretty. And so, yeah.
So you walk into the studio and you haven't heard the song.
No.
But
I had heard some of the... Sorry to interject. I had Dave on the journey played me some of the demos of tracks they'd laid down.
Okay.
So I got a chance to hear some of their sound then, because that's the first I'd ever heard of Doves.
Right.
Or nobody'd heard them. So, and I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. It's filmic, and yeah, I like it. But then we got to the studio. Yeah, I'd not heard the track at all.
Right.
That was the first time.
Do you think that your experience playing jazz music helped inform just your ability to write a part on the spot?
Definitely, because I had that. I wasn't wasn't phased to improvise at all, because that's what I'd been doing for the last couple of years, really, and learning how to do that and be on the spot where somebody does this key change, and it's like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting, just picking it up.
Right.
So yeah, it didn't faze me at all. I mean, Jimmy, Andy, and Jess, they're great producers and songwriters, and they're quite specific what they wanted. But then also there is a solo in that track, and they were just like, go for it, do whatever you want, and the ending as well. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that track, but it's a piano-based track, and there's a solo in the middle, and there's a piano outro, and so yeah, I mean, I was put on the spot there. It's like, oh right, okay, just do a solo here, and that's one of my first times in being in a recording studio playing on a record, and it's what's great about Jimmy, Andy, and Jez is they're from, they're used to listening to talk and things like that, and really tasteful rock, pop, and so if anything, I was probably going a bit too far, improvising maybe too much, and they were pulling me back a bit more. Just be a bit more sort of cool and laid back, and you don't have to go to town on this. Just so if anything, I was holding back a bit more, really. And
looking back on what you recorded, I'm not familiar with the song, but I'm going to listen to it as soon as we're done. Looking back on that first recording experience there with them, how do you feel when you hear the part that you recorded that day?
Yeah, really proud of it. Really proud of it. Yeah, it's just great experience. Everything about that day was great, and yeah, I wouldn't change a thing about it. No, I played on that track at all.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't look back and think, "Oh God, how did it?" I'm just proud of it. It was a great
Would
experience.
you say you don't look back in anger?
Boo.
Boo. How soon after that day did you get a call from them saying, "Hey, remember us?"
Well, not for a while. It was.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I can't recall. I think it was probably about this time of year that the recording session was happening. Sort of cold October, November in Wales. And then I just kind of went about my business then, and I was looking for other bands to join, and just putting feelers out there, really. And mainly sort of in London, really. A few bits and pieces in Manchester, but I just thought I'm probably going to have to move to London because that's where all the bands are, and I want to tour, and I want to be in a band really now. And I kept in touch with those guys, and they did a gig in London, and I went to go and see it. So they did do a gig without me, and yeah, I think. Well, I don't know what the story was about it, but when they had their first tour booked, it was like April after. Yeah, I just got a call, just saying, "Hey, thanks for joining us on the session. Do you want to come on tour with us?" It was simple as that.
Was there was you said that the song that you played on was piano based? Was there enough for you to do, or were there there's songs that you completely sat out when we toured together?
Yeah.
Was it like that as well?
No, not really. Well, a bit of both. It was. I mean, it's quite guitar, especially that first record is quite guitar heavy.
Yeah.
But there was loads of samples, old film samples and things like that. And I'd been composing my own music for the past few years prior to that, and I got Akai samplers, and so I was used to working in that realm. And Jez at the time, I mean, we've had this discussion about yourself using a foot pedal, like a MIDI foot switches, and Jez used to do that. He used to trigger samples.
Right.
He's like an octopus, so he's playing guitar, singing backing vocals, triggering all these samples, And it was just too much for him to handle. He was like, I can't concentrate playing guitar and triggering all these samples. That's why they needed me, not just to play piano on Here It Comes, but there's Catch the Sun, there was organ parts and all sorts, really. But all these samples to take on board as well. Things that they'd done on the record, like Andy playing harmonica, that was really sort of spaced out harmonica part that you just can't recreate live, that you needed to trigger it as a sample.
Right. So, what year is this?
So I found that fascinating as well, and that was
similar to what you were doing in the theater, right?
Well, so I had that background, you see, because in the theatre, it's somebody be knocking on a door, and you'd have to play the sample of somebody knocking on a door, or a doorbell or something like that. And so it was that same approach, really, and I'd never done that live. I'd always been a pure sort of piano player or electric piano, Fender Rhodes player or something.
Right.
So that was incorporating both, and I found it really just a different discipline and really enjoyable, something new. But what comes with that is you have to be reliant on technology, and things go wrong.
What could possibly go wrong?
But yeah, I enjoyed it. I embraced all that.
And so, to give some perspective on this, what year is this when you start playing with Doves?
99.
1999. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. And you're 22 now at this point?
I thought you said, now.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, like maybe a bit older, yeah. So, early 20s anyway.
Young.
Yeah.
When you would come home from tour, were you looking for other gigs just to stay busy? Or were you at that point like, well, I got it made in the shade, I'm just going to relax, work on dance music at home?
Yeah, a bit of both, really. Do you mean when I got that tour?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was. Luckily, at that point, Doves really blew up instantly, really. So they put track Cedar Room out in between sort of me doing the recording with them and the tour. They put a track called Cedar Room out, and it got Radio 1, and it had a bit of attention and heat to it, and it was, yeah, I can't remember what the next thing was, but it was things were just getting offered left, right, and centre, and before we knew it, we got offered. I was touring Australia, and then we got offered to play with Oasis at Wembley Stadium 2 nights.
So wait a minute. I want to pump the brakes right here. So that's a massive gig. So it's hard to compare a gig like those 2 nights to anything else before or after, right?
Yeah.
But
absolutely,
just so that we can sort of mark that time, what kind of gigs are you doing? You're playing. I remember you guys came through Seattle. You played the Showbox.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That was. Yeah, the first tour of America we did. All these things just got snowballed instantly, and it was Australia, like I said, and playing with Oasis and going to tour America, and when we toured America, was with an unsigned band that was had loads of heat on them, called the Strokes.
Right.
They were supporting us, and so it was funny because when we were playing all these venues in America, they had a lot of heat on them. And I think every A&R man not just in America, every A&R man in the world was coming to every gig because they'd heard stories about the Strokes, and everybody desperately wanted to sign them. So
Those guys don't look like they had a lot of free dinners, though. They're very thin.
True.
They must have been getting something else.
True. God, yeah, I remember those salad days of free dinners, industry dinners. They were great.
So nice.
Those days are long gone.
Yeah, no doubt. That must have been a super exciting time. For me, no matter what gig I've ever had, from the very beginning, even when I was green and didn't understand, anything, my dick from a door handle, it was like I understood 15 minutes goes by pretty quick. And so I would always just go straight back to work the day after I got home from tour. To this day, still. What was your mindset through this? Because you're rolling, things are going well. You're getting a weekly salary, I'm assuming, and you're still living in a house with 5 people.
Yeah, well, at that point, I'd moved, and it was with 3 people. But I mean, I was never there. It was just so
Still
I'd
a
gone
home
from
share.
yeah. I mean, but I'd gone from playing, to a jazz club 3 nights a week, and then playing a funk gig, for just pocket change, just covering the bills,
Right.
to being in a signed band that have got a lot of heat and attention on. Having being on a wage, so I could give up all that other stuff, and just focus purely on Doves. And it was great. So I wasn't thinking, oh, what's going to happen next year or 6 months' time down the road. I was just living for the moment, really, like you do when you're in your early 20s, and this is great. This is going to last forever, right?
Sure.
And so, and I mean, in the way things were going, it was just like, wow, it was on a real upward trajectory. And yeah, we were just getting offered tour after tour after tour, and it came to the point where the band and the label had to say, "Look, we've got to stop gigging and touring. We've got to write the next record now."
Right.
But then I was involved in that as well, you see. So when we were off tour, the next record, they tried to turn it around pretty quick, but it's still sort of 18 months.
Sure.
Really. But I was in the studio with them all the time, and I played on majority of that record then. So from previously, I'd only gone and played on one track on the first album to be just around the studio with them all the time, and to get all the studio experience and working with multiple engineers and producers, and that was great. And then by the time that came around, then the album came out, and that got to #1. That album did. So then it just went full. And then we were on tour for a good year, solid, really. I think I came home for about 2 weeks. I was just just out on the road.
I love that life.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just, when you're in your early 20s doing that, touring the world.
I want to come
TV
back to the
shows
timeline here, but let me ask you this. How does your life, and just like, you're not 24 anymore. How do you enjoy touring now as opposed to then, and how does your life now relate to it similarly, and how is it different?
Well, I've got a lot of gratitude. I've got a lot of gratitude for now. I've got a lot of gratitude for what I've been through and had. I mean, those days were very different times, because that was pre-Spotify and streaming and YouTube and all these sort of things. So
Sure.
people very much bought records. And so because they bought records, the record labels had money. and therefore there was tour support. And so even on those very first tours where we had, it was Doves had no name in America at all, it's like, right, here you go, here's this tour bus, really fancy tour bus, and you can travel business class when you fly over there, and all these sort of things, and it's living the life of Riley. It's just great. And unfortunately, those days are long gone now, as you know. And it's in order to make tours work, because the record labels aren't really making the money that they used to anymore. Therefore, the artists aren't making the money that they used to anymore. So you have to do it on a much smaller budget. But having said that, I feel very fortunate that I'm still one of the few that's still able to do it.
Right.
Because there's not many people that can do it. There's not many bands that can, without the tour support that record labels used to give you in the early 2000s. There's so many bands now that just, I can't afford to go to America and tour America.
I know this is a tricky question. I know that this is a tricky question just because it might sound like a different question, but do you still get excited about touring the world? And it's not a question about music, because obviously if you hated playing music, you would go talk to your old advisor about that trainee position.
Yeah.
But do you get excited about traveling and being in different cities? Because my experience is like, we didn't have a ton of free time, but when we did have time off, you would go and see some things, and not everyone is interested in doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always felt very privileged to be able to go and travel, and I always wanted to travel. And I mean, the only times I've ever been to New York, for instance, the first time, and still to this day, the only time I've ever been to New York is to play there, to get paid to be there.
Right.
Which I just think is incredible. I still pinch myself thinking about that. It's like, wow. And same with Sydney, Australia. The only time I've ever been there is I've been paid to go there. And it's a lot of people's ambition. Oh, God, I'd love to travel to Australia and visit there. And, I'm getting paid to be there. But also you think, well, how many chances and opportunities am I going to get in my life to do this? Not many. So when I'm there, I want to experience it. And the thing is, we are working. So it's, as you know, we really haven't got...
There are limitations on what you can do with your free time, but
you
still have a little.
Yeah, we're not on holiday. We are working. We've got a sound check. We've got to set gear up. We've got to eat.
Let's not get excited about we have sound check. What time sound check? Is it 3? What about 5:30?
My feelings on sound check. See, I'd rather be exploring than sound checking. It's just...
Sure.
It's a waste of time.
Festival style works.
Festival style, yes. Hello.
I really started to come around on that, by the way.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? That theory.
I mean,
because everybody had a better sound that night than when we just did it festival style.
Could have just been chance, also.
Yeah. It's not.
But we'll never know.
No.
What about... I want to talk about a little bit about other gigs, and then we don't have a ton of time left, but how long have you been playing with Hookie and these guys, and how did that gig come together? And then I definitely want to ask you about Echo and the Bunnymen, because we got to see Echo and the Bunnymen while we were on tour with a night off. They played a venue that we were playing the next night. So we all went, and it was fun to watch the show with you in particular.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It's a band that's like pretty important to me, and it's funny because I'm like such a fanboy, and you guys like you toured with the band and everyone else sort of is very familiar, with the characters uh, in the stage play. So, and I don't know anything about anyone. That's kind of my thing. I don't really know. I listened to Hookie's audiobook while we were on tour.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
It's good, isn't it, by the way?
It's fucking fantastic. It's, doesn't sound like he read it at all. It sounds like he was just kind of telling you a story. Maybe he
Yeah, I
can't
mean, well,
read. The
that's what he's like.
newspapers he's looking at are months old, so he might not know the difference. I don't know. Just saying.
That is true. That's a tidbit of information, isn't there? About his ancient newspapers that he carries around with him. But he's just like, you listen to his audiobook. He's like that on tour. The amount of tour stories he's been through, 40 years worth.
Yeah.
They're, you just want to hear those stories. Even if you've heard them before, it's just like, wow, this amazing, these stories.
It was pretty enjoyable. I would always be ready to hear another story for sure. I was into it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's just the way you read that book is the way he is. He's just got a great story. He's had a great life.
So how did you come to be in that band?
Well, that was quite fortuitous. Again, Dubs were on hiatus. So from 2010, I mean, we had a good stretch from 1999 till 2010. We're pretty much full on Doves, touring the world, and in between touring, writing, recording. Well, I was part of the recording process, but and then in 2010 it will stop, and everybody was sort of everybody needs a break from everybody else, and so from that point onwards, for a few years, I was doing my own thing and working with a few other people, and where did that bring us up to? Oh, well, Andy and Jez from Doves did another project called Black Rivers, which I was involved with that. And then after that, I was just going for a hike with Jez, not too far out of Manchester, where there's no phone reception. And when we got down, I just got a voicemail message from Paul Keogh, drummer from The Light, just saying, "Hey, we're looking for a keyboard player. Do you fancy joining the band?"
Did you know him before?
Yeah, briefly, but not for many years. But it was mainly, I think, because there's a guy called Crommy, who's I don't know if you've ever met him, but he's a tech that's just worked for everybody, from Stone Roses to Doves, Prince. He's just worked for everybody, and he I think he just said, "Oh, why don't you use Martin? The Doves not doing anything."
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Keo called.
Yeah,
and
so he just left
you guys
had
mutuals, and he just left a message. And what the old guy's name was? Andy.
Yeah, who I've never met, but heard great things about. So for whatever reason, Andy, their previous keyboard player, left the band, and they needed somebody. And I think they'd been through a few keyboard players that hadn't worked out for whatever reason. And I just got that call out of the blue, and I happened to be. I mean, I was doing a couple of other projects of my own, but they weren't touring the world like Hookie does.
Tell me about your first gig, because you were thrown in at least as harshly as I. Did you have a rehearsal?
No, didn't have a rehearsal. But I met up with. I think like the next day or the day after, I met up with Paul and Jack, Hookie's son, for a beer and just sort of chew the fat, really, and just meet up. And So this was like, say, the Monday or Tuesday, and they were like, I was like, okay, well, when's the next gig? When do you need somebody? And they were like, well, we've got a gig on Thursday. First gig's on Thursday, but they'd been doing gigs without a keyboard player because they didn't have one, so doing predominantly sort of Joy Division stuff. So they were like, look, we hadn't expected to get somebody for it, but if you want to come down, then great. And I was like, yeah, not only I'll come down, I'll play. Why not? And so Jack just gave me a set and just said, yeah, learn these tracks, just turn up and play. So I did.
So there were no songs with sequencers in them, or were there?
I can't recall.
Because learning to run everything in that process had like adjusting and acclimating to running the tracks and changing sounds and.
Well, those first couple of gigs, Paul took over those duties.
Got it.
Anything that had sort of percussion track or anything or any of the things on back in.
How did that gig go?
Well, it was so it was. Do you know the band James?
Yes.
Well, it was their gig in Newcastle, and it was a big outdoor gig. 10,000 people, something like that. And so we were supporting them. And Tim Booth, who's singer of James, wanted to come and join us to sing Love Will Tear Us Apart. And so my very first experience playing with Pete Hook and the Light was sound check before James, which is like a festival style line check and quick before doors. And we only really had time to do Love Will Tear Us Apart because Tim Booth wanted to sing on it and he needed to learn it. And so he got on stage, and out of everybody in the whole band, he turned and came up to me and he went, oh, because I'm not familiar with this track, can you cue me in on the vocals? Assuming
well, I think that's fair enough. It's you're usually in a pretty safe place to ask the keyboard player for any sort of cueing or advice, because typically they're the most learned and they're next to the drummer the most attentive, because a guitar player is just interested in the guitaring, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, quite often you can be, you do get keyboard players at musical directors or whatever, and
right.
So he just assumed, I guess. But I was just like, this is the first time I've played this track as well. With you now.
That's amazing.
So that was quite funny.
That's great.
So I got quickly to sound check that one track then, and then it was straight into this set. In front of 10,000 people with no rehearsal. And they put a lot of trust and faith in me, really, because I was just like, yeah, it's fine, I've got it down.
How did it go?
It was great. It was really good. And then almost a bit
rightfully so, they put their faith in you. You're a fine musician. You're rock solid and reliable.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was. It almost went too well, that gig, because then the next
because you asked for a raise at the end.
No, because then there was quite a few gigs in the calendar after that, and they were okay. Well, you don't need to rehearse then, do you? Because you did that gig in front of 10,000 people.
Like,
well, this is a breeze for you now. And then, like what happened to you when we were at an airport somewhere, it's like, oh, can you just put this track in? Can you put this track in? Put this track in. But they were all festivals as well, so there's no sound check. It's just a line check,
of course,
and you're on. So not only were we rehearsing, we weren't going to rehearse them at all. It was just the first time I'd played those tracks were on stage in front of other people, and I mean it's really exciting. I've never done that before. I mean, with Doves, it's the polar opposite. With Doves, we rehearse for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. and that's what I've been used to. But I suppose once again, it's sort of I drew from that experience of when I was at uni, playing jazz and improvising, and you put on the
There's
spot.
something really exciting, like shooting from the hip like that. Just like, all right, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I
Yeah,
hope to fucking God it goes well.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's quite perverse, as in, wow, this could go horribly wrong, or it'll be amazing.
When it goes well, though, it feels better than anything, better than any drug,
Oh,
better than
yeah,
any other sort of experience you could really even have.
absolutely. Oh, yeah. That rush. I mean, because you experienced it because you got that moment of dread of like, okay, wow, uh, you'd be put on the spot sort of half an hour before you go on stage. Oh, I'd love to play. Have you ever heard Isolation? It's like, no. Oh, well, just get it on the headphones. We've got half an hour before the stage or whatever, and so you get your headphones on. It's
You'll
just
be fine.
that moment of panic of trying to learn something that quick, and then when it comes off and you play it, then that rush is incredible, amazing.
And here you are 12 years on and still doing that gig and still traveling the world. You guys are going to Australia soon.
Yeah. Well, I've only been doing
Um,
it with them for 5 years. They've been doing
oh,
it
is
as
that
well.
right?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
right.
they had Andy and previous keyboard players.
Right, right,
I was
right.
in Dove's world then, but yeah.
How did the Echo and the Bunnymen gig come to you? And uh, with, I guess, what was the preparation for that like? Were you a fan of the band before? And um,
Well, I knew their big hits. I knew the Killing Moon and Cutter. I wasn't an aficionado about all their sort of B sides and their entire back catalogue or anything, but I certainly knew the big hits and liked them. And I knew the Doors cover they did and the sort of the Doors influences they had because I was into the Doors group and the Lost Boys soundtrack, and so yeah, of course I'm aware of their music and respected them a lot. And well, it's because we were supposed to last year do a Doves tour, um, touring the Universal Want record, and that tour was due for February this year, and I think I can't remember the end of last year. Bunnyman's manager rang me up and he said, "Oh, look, keyboard player is leaving. Do you fancy doing it?" I was like, "I know you're busy, but I thought I'd ask anyway." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm busy. I can't. There's a Doves tour."
right.
Um, and it's really nice to be asked. And I was just like, "Oh wow." It's like buses. They always come at once. These things. It's like, oh, what shame, because that would have been something I'd have liked to have done, but I wouldn't have been able to fit it in. And then then the Doves tour never happened, unfortunately. And I got the call again, which I wasn't expecting, saying, "Hey, yeah, we know you're free. Do you fancy doing it now?" So this was sort of January this year. I got asked, and I was like, "Wow, okay, that's an opportunity." Which I can't really say no. I mean, in my head, I knew that I'd had, because of COVID and everything, that past 3 years, 2-3 years, gigs had all been postponed and postponed and postponed and postponed, and so I knew I had a pretty full diary this year, and I was like, okay, it's great. Wasn't expecting to do anything in February there. I thought I was thinking of going on holiday or something, or just do my own music or something. So, but that's just I couldn't turn it down, that opportunity.
How long did you have to woodshed and get ready for that? And they don't play a 3 hour show like the
No,
light does.
That's right.
They play, 75 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that right? Maybe 90?
Yeah, exactly. Not too long. And it was so it was the same sort of thing as what happened with the light, though. It was because, bearing in mind, it was sort of November-ish time that I'd got a call initially saying, "Oh, do you want to do tour in February?" And it was like, okay, wow, there's months to prep here. It's like, wow, it's perfect, but I'm busy, I can't. But when I got the call eventually, it was like a Sunday. I got the call and I was like, okay, when does rehearsal start? It's like Thursday. Okay, right. So we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to learn the set.
Together.
Yeah. And so that's what I did.
What was that preparation
to woodshed
like?
for 3. Intense, as you know, those sort of things are very intense. Just get me the set.
Did the set list change nightly, or was it pretty set? So you had like 20 songs to learn.
Yeah, it was pretty set.
Yeah. Well, that's a relief, at least.
That was a huge relief because I'm used to working with Hooky, where the set list just changes. I mean, this is why you were really in the deep end, because the set list changes quite dramatically every night. It can do. I mean, with dubs, we pretty much stick to the same set, and maybe the odd track might change here and there, but it's predominantly the same. But we might, with the light, we might do 6 different tracks every night for 6 gigs on the trot, and we might not play the same track again.
It's hard to get familiar with songs and really get comfortable.
Very hard when you're
doing them that infrequently.
But yeah, with Bunnyman, it wasn't like that at all. It was like, here's the probable set of like 18 tracks, and then here's another 10 or so, 12 that we might do. So just had to just go through them and just a lot of listening, like what you were saying, a lot of listening.
Yeah. How long was that run, and how did it go?
Yeah, that was all an entire February UK tour. So
wow.
Yeah. So we started rehearsing sort of mid-end of Jan, and then the whole of February on sleeper bus all around the UK.
There was a dog walking by.
Bless him.
Sorry.
Yeah. So all of February. So it's quite a long tour. And yeah, I didn't really know. I knew the bass player. I knew Steve, bass player. He was the only person I knew.
Wow.
But that was nice to have that one friendly face that you know.
Sure. Assuming that we'll just start from a place where you're happy with things, like you're able to tour and make a living playing music, performing and touring right now. Are there any bands that you wish you could get an opportunity to play with? Like who is on your bucket list of bands to play with? And that could include Herbie Hancock. I could give a fuck. Like, it's your list.
Yeah, so not necessarily contemporary then.
Could be anyone.
Yeah, I mean, my all-time go-to would be The Doors.
Tough band to be able to play with right now.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Although,
very tough band to play with right now. Although I did see, drummer and the guitarist still around though, right?
Yeah, I saw Robbie Krieger play.
They need a keyboard player.
Yeah. We just made a highlight reel. I'll tag him.
Please do.
So The Doors.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the ultimate. I mean, I use huge. I mean, when I say Herbie Hancock was a massive influence, so was Ray Manzarek. Huge influence on me, and yeah, it's just. I mean, it's interesting because I saw a video of them. I was having this conversation earlier today. I don't think they ever played LA Woman or Riders on the Storm live.
Really?
Yeah. Well, maybe they did LA Woman once, a really sort of psychedelic version, because by that point, they recorded with a bass player in the studio.
Right.
And they didn't have a bass player live, and so I don't think they ever did it. I mean, I could be wrong there, but I was just Googling that the other day, and I couldn't. I just, can I see if I could find it? And I found a version of recently, John and Robbie playing it with for some award ceremony a few years ago, and they'd got a guest vocalist and guest keyboard player, and and Santana on guitar, and it was just like, so the drums, they sounded, so he can still drum incredibly well.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh wow, okay. And I don't know who they had on vocals, but he did a pretty good job. And then you had Santana just noodling through it. It was like, oh, this isn't right at all.
I appreciate Santana's presence, but I'm not the biggest fan.
I mean, Woodstock, amazing. Yeah.
Sure.
But
sure. I know that, there's probably a lot of people that'll be disappointed to hear me say that, but it's the truth. Whatever. So there's no other like band in your top 3 that you would put on your bucket list bands to play with.
Well, Rolling Stones.
Oh, that would be fucking hot.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Yeah, because also, I mean, well, because you know the story, but I've never seen them before. Always wanted to see them, but I've got to play with them. Yeah, I mean, I've always been on tour somewhere else around the world when they've been playing in my city, which is infrequent anyway. And
I've always been too broke.
Oh yeah, all that as well. Because it's not a cheap ticket, is it?
No.
And it's one of those things that you want to tick off, isn't it? Whilst you can see them. Good luck with that.
What about Paul McCartney?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've met Paul McCartney's keyboard player, actually. Nice guy.
It would be a shame if he took a spill down some steps. Just saying.
God.
Everything's for sale. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be in the UK soon.
Oh dear. But obviously that would be amazing. I
just wish he had more songs. I wish he had a bigger catalog of fun material.
Yeah, he needs a song, doesn't he? He needs a song. Yeah, I don't know. The Stones, though, it's seeing them. I mean, I've never seen Paul McCartney live. To be fair, I've only seen him on TV at Glastonbury and the Olympics, which I was really sort of disappointed with. And I'm a huge McCartney fan, Beatles fan. It's just, yeah, I don't know. He hasn't quite got that range anymore, has he? But he's an old guy, He's, incredible, absolute genius, obviously. But
I think he still sounds killer.
Oh, interesting.
I do.
I think he's playing his guitar playing. Oh, he still got it.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the Stones.
But the Stones, when I saw them play this year, when we supported them with the Bunnymen, I was really impressed, genuinely impressed. They can still cut it. They really have still got it. And Mick, he's 80, just running up and down the stage, and he can sing great. It's just, yeah, that would be a band to play in.
Yeah, I'd say so.
How about you?
Oh, I don't
Because it is a
know.
great
I
question. It's a
mean,
great question.
yeah, I occasionally ask people that, especially people who play with a number of different bands, or have experience playing with a number of different bands. I don't know. I mean, I would love to I'd love to play bass in Queens of the Stone Age. I think that would be fun.
Mm.
Um, I really have enjoyed playing bass a lot the last couple years. Um, Guitar, I don't know. Like playing rhythm guitar in AC/DC would be unbelievable, but that's a absolute pipe dream fantasy for anyone not named Young, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm, yeah, I don't know. But those two bands certainly come to mind. Just I did recently tweet that I am 200% available to tour with Depeche Mode.
Oh
They
yeah. I mean,
announced
that would be a
they
great. Wow.
they just announced a record, so I mean, probably they'll tour, right? I mean,
Hashtag
how
available.
unbelievable would that be?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a band I'd like to play keyboards for as well, for
Honestly, I
sure.
would love to play guitar or bass in Echo and the Bunnymen because I'm a fan. Um,
Mm.
and but
Great band. I mean, they're great band.
yeah, I just love
I mean,
the
you look at
music.
you look at the history of the band because it's interesting when I've joined for that month, and then playing with the Stones as well, which is amazing. But you look at the history of all the people that have been in the band over 20
Right.
years, and it's a huge list. But it's really like reverential list of people that have gone on to do incredible things as well.
So
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, good company.
Well, uh, I think that it's time to wrap it up. These dogs are fucking going bananas, and my work is going to be heavy to cut all the bits out
Yeah,
so it's not super annoying to people who are listening. I had it's so good to see you again.
yeah, great to see you.
Uh,
It's
and
like it's just world past that tour, didn't it? It was so good.
It seemed
Enjoyed
like
it
at the
so much.
beginning, it seemed like, God, this is going to be forever. And at the end, it felt like, wow, it's over. It's over. Crazy. That was fast.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Um,
I mean, we could do a whole another podcast just about your perspective of touring with us, really, because there's
well,
so
it's
much to
funny
talk about
because
there,
it
isn't
changed over the course of like getting myself acclimated to that style of travel and just through the process of learning everyone's sense of humor and understanding how to move through the day with everyone.
it? Yeah.
Just with any group is like that, but being the only American in a crew of all northern Brits also is like, okay, there's a transition.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There really there was for both sides, I think, to just understand each other's humor, and then there was just a moment,
Sure.
that transition, like you say, that we all were like, right, okay, we get you, he gets
Right.
us now.
um I'm gonna kill this thing. I think you're fucking great. I appreciate the time that we got to tour together, and I really appreciate you making time to talk to me. I hope that you guys have the best time in Australia. I'll make sure to include sort of your guys' tour dates in the intro that I cut.
Cool. Oh, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it. It's great to see you, speak to you.
It's good to see you too. You're great.
Yeah,
I
no,
love your
you're
work.
great.
I love your
I'm
work.
happy to be here.
Okay, let's see. And all right. Oh wait, stop.